Society has long branded bodybuilding as one of the world's most dangerous sports. And when you look at the shocking number of young athletes dying in their prime, it's hard to argue otherwise. These tragedies seem almost commonplace, happening with alarming frequency. But here's the truth. Bodybuilding itself isn't the killer. The real culprits are what scientists call epigenetic factors: alcoholism, smoking, substance abuse, and reckless lifestyle choices that compound the inherent risks of the sport. Now, I know diehard fans will defend bodybuilding to their last breath, and I respect the dedication these athletes show. But let's face one undeniable fact. Whether you're morbidly obese or a professional bodybuilder, carrying an extra 50 to 200 pounds of mass, muscle, or fat puts a catastrophic strain on your cardiovascular system and vital organs. No amount of cardio, no supplement stack, no clean protocol can fully offset that burden. Today, I'm bringing you the 10 most shocking cases of bodybuilders who never made it to 30. Almost every single death involved cardiac arrest or stroke. These aren't just statistics. These are cautionary tales that expose the dark side of extreme muscle building. Let's dive in. Scott Klein. Born February 11th, 1973, Scott Klein wasn't just massive. He was a walking chemistry experiment gone wrong. Beyond his impressive muscle mass, Scott's body harbored a ticking time bomb. Massive amounts of paraffin, a site enhancement oil similar to synthol, but with one horrifying difference: it never leaves your muscles, ever. Combined with heavy steroid use, his extreme body weight, powerful stimulants, and that permanent paraffin contamination, Scott's organs were under relentless siege. He died at just 30 years old, reportedly in his sleep. The official cause? Kidney failure, a condition he'd been battling for months before his body finally gave out. But Scott's autopsy results only tell part of the story. Digging through bodybuilding forums, I found posts from people claiming to be close friends and training partners. Their accounts paint a much darker picture. Scott lived a chaotic, drug-fueled lifestyle. Cocaine was a regular indulgence, but his real vice was GHB, gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, better known as liquid ecstasy, a party drug notorious in the club scene. His addiction was so expensive that Scott turned to an underground income stream that few in the fitness industry openly discuss. He reportedly earned money by posing nude for wealthy clients, sometimes in hotel rooms, sometimes at exclusive private events. A standard posing session could net him up to $10,000. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. His clientele was exclusively male, and according to forum insiders, the money could climb much higher depending on what additional services were requested. This wasn't just Scott's secret. Multiple sources claim this was a surprisingly common hustle among bodybuilders back then, a shadowy economy that thrived behind closed doors, far from the glossy magazine covers and supplement endorsements. In Scott Klein's case, we're looking at a perfect storm of epigenetic disaster: substance abuse, extreme body mass, toxic site enhancement oils, and a cardiovascular system that never stood a chance. Boston Lloyd. Born March the 29th, 1992 in Los Angeles, Boston Lloyd was destined for bodybuilding from birth. His father was deep in the iron game, and young Boston followed that path with obsessive dedication. Interestingly, his grandmother is still alive today, working as a senior attorney for a private firm, a stark contrast to the world her grandson would enter. But Boston didn't just build muscle, he built a reputation as bodybuilding's most brutally honest voice. He became a legend on YouTube, one of the first athletes to pull back the curtain and expose the sport's dirty secrets. While supplement companies pushed overpriced powders and natural transformations, Boston called it what it was: a scam. He filmed himself performing steroid injections, site enhancement oil shots with paraffin, and laid out his entire drug protocols in graphic detail. His transparency made him a hero to some and a threat to others. The IFBB and major bodybuilding organizations faced mounting criticism for their blatant hypocrisy, largely thanks to Boston's unfiltered commentary. But the consequences of his lifestyle and his honesty were already closing in. On February 15th, 2022, Boston collapsed at home. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead at just 29 years old. Bodybuilding coach Dave Palumbo later revealed the cause: an aortic dissection, a catastrophic tear in the body's main artery, essentially a death sentence once it happens. 2 years earlier, in 2020, the then 28-year-old Boston publicly admitted he'd been experimenting with a peptide called epithalon, which triggered severe kidney failure. His kidney disease progressed to stage 5, the final stage before total renal shutdown. He'd been on a relentless chemical regimen for over a decade, and his body simply couldn't sustain it. But here's the genetic factor Dave Palumbo emphasized. Boston's father had previously suffered an aortic aneurysm. Boston inherited a cardiovascular system that was already compromised, a genetic landmine just waiting to be triggered by the extreme stress of bodybuilding bodybuilding and performance-enhancing drugs. Boston Lloyd didn't just die young, he died telling the truth. Dan Pucket. Born in 1985, Dan Pucket was a rising star with championship gold already under his belt. In 2006, he claimed the heavyweight title at the NPC Teen and College National Bodybuilding Competition in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a prestigious victory that put him on the map. But that wasn't his first taste of success. Dan had already dominated the stage, winning the heavyweight division at both the 2004 and 2005 Mississippi State Championships and taking top honors at the 2005 Southern Classic Tournament. His competitive record was flawless, and his future looked unstoppable. Off the stage, Dan was a marketing major at the University of Alabama, balancing textbooks with training splits, building both his body and his future. Then on November 7th, 2007, everything came crashing down. Dan's roommate returned to their Tuscaloosa apartment and made a horrifying discovery. Dan was dead in the bathroom. Just the day before, he'd come home from the gym complaining about what he thought was a simple muscle injury. Nothing seemed life-threatening, nothing seemed urgent, but it wasn't a pulled muscle. The autopsy revealed the real killer: sudden cardiac failure. His heart, pushed to its absolute limit by years of intense training, extreme dieting, and the cardiovascular strain of carrying massive muscle mass, simply gave out. Dan Pucket was only 22 years old. No warning signs, no dramatic collapse at the gym. Just a young man with a bright future, gone in an instant. Bret Michaels, born Robert Christopher Sager on December 2nd, 1977. The man who would become known as Bret Michaels seemed destined for the spotlight. At just 22 years old, he stepped onto the stage at the Arnold Classic in Ohio, one of bodybuilding's most prestigious events. That's where renowned photographer Irwin Gelb spotted him, and Bret's career trajectory changed overnight. He quickly became a sought-after fitness model, his chiseled physique gracing the pages of major publications. He also worked as a menswear model, embodying the crossover appeal between bodybuilding and mainstream fashion. But Bret's real income and fame came from a different industry entirely. He became a prominent figure in same-sex adult films, building a lucrative career that extended beyond the camera. He reportedly worked privately with high-paying clients, a discreet but profitable side of his modeling work. Despite his success, something was very wrong. For several weeks leading up to his death, Bret complained about an irregular heartbeat, a warning sign his body was sending that he couldn't ignore, but perhaps didn't fully understand the severity of. On February 25th, 2007, Bret Michaels died in his sleep in Chicago. He was only 29 years old. Family and friends revealed the tragic truth. Bret had been living with congenital heart failure, a heart defect he was born with. But genetics weren't the only enemy. His condition was severely worsened by a dangerous combination of performance-enhancing drugs and chronic alcoholism. His heart, already compromised from birth, was being chemically assaulted from every angle. It never stood a chance. Bret Michaels built his career on his body, but in the end, that same body betrayed him. Daniel Alexander. Daniel Alexander was a champion on the rise. In 2017, he captured the Mr. USA middleweight title, adding to his impressive 2014 California State Championship victory. With 2 major wins under his belt, Daniel was hungry for more, actively courting media attention and building his brand as an up-and-coming force in professional bodybuilding. He'd earned his IFBB pro card and was competing in the 212 division, a weight class known for its aesthetic, balanced physiques. Daniel had all the tools: the genetics, the work ethic, the stage presence. His second professional show was supposed to be his breakthrough moment, but that show never happened. On September 9th, 2019, while deep in prep for the Legion Sports Fest, Daniel Alexander suddenly passed away. Details surrounding his death remain frustratingly scarce. No official autopsy report was widely released, and his family kept the specifics private. What we do know is that he was in contest prep mode, a notoriously brutal phase where bodybuilders push their bodies to the absolute edge. Extreme calorie restriction, dehydration, harsh fat-burning drugs, and maximum cardiovascular strain. Daniel was under 30 years old, another young athlete with limitless potential, gone before he ever got the chance to truly shine on the professional stage. His story is a haunting reminder that sometimes the dream of standing under those stage lights costs everything. Robert Benavente. Born October 22nd, 1974, Robert Benavente launched his competitive bodybuilding career in 1994. Entering the NPC teen division with high hopes and raw talent. He spent years refining his physique, grinding through the amateur ranks with determination. In 2003, his hard work paid off. Robert took first place at the Southern States competition, a significant victory that validated everything he'd sacrificed. He had the genetics, the discipline, and the look that judges rewarded. His future in the sport seemed promising, but his body was sending signals he either couldn't hear or chose to ignore. In 2004, just 1 year after his biggest win, Robert Benavente suffered a massive heart attack. He was only 30 years old. The details are tragically predictable by now. Years of carrying extreme muscle mass, the relentless cardiovascular demands of contest prep, performance-enhancing drugs pushing his heart beyond its limits. His cardiovascular system simply couldn't sustain the stress anymore. Robert's story is a brutal reminder that in bodybuilding, winning on stage doesn't mean your body is winning behind the scenes. Sometimes the price of victory is paid in full long after you've left the competition. Aziz Shavershian Zyzz. More than a decade after his death, Aziz Shavershian, better known as Zyzz, remains a legend. Videos, tributes, and debates about his life still flood the internet. He wasn't a professional bodybuilder, never stepped on an IFBB stage, but his impact on fitness culture is undeniable. He founded the aesthetic movement, inspiring millions of young people worldwide to hit the gym, chase the pump, and transform their bodies. But Zyzz's story isn't just about motivation and aesthetics. It's a cautionary tale of genetics, lifestyle, and denial colliding in the worst possible way. Aziz died at just 22 years old. Several factors sealed his fate. First, genetics. Many sources claim he had a congenital heart defect, though this has never been officially confirmed. His mother's public statement in the autopsy report don't explicitly use the word congenital. What is confirmed is that Aziz had an enlarged heart, a dangerous condition that significantly increases the risk of sudden cardiac death. Then there's the epigenetic side, the lifestyle choices that turned a vulnerable heart into a ticking time bomb. Aziz was a notorious partygoer, heavily involved in the club scene, using recreational drugs regularly. When you combine a structurally compromised heart with substance abuse, extreme steroid cycles, and the cardiovascular strain of intense training, you're playing Russian roulette with your life. On August 5th, 2011, while vacationing in Bangkok, Aziz stepped into a sauna. Minutes later, he collapsed. A staff member found him unconscious and raised the alarm. Paramedics arrived quickly and fought to revive him, but it was too late. His heart had given out. The autopsy confirmed what many suspected. An undiagnosed, severely enlarged heart was the cause of death. In the months leading up to his death, warning signs were everywhere. His parents later revealed that Aziz had been suffering from high blood pressure and shortness of breath, textbook symptoms of cardiac stress, and an enlarged heart struggling to function. He ignored them. Or maybe he didn't realize how serious they were. Here's the terrifying reality. If you want to understand how a young man on a brutal steroid regimen can enlarge his heart to dangerous levels by his mid-20s and die from the consequences, Zyzz's story is the blueprint. He became immortal online, but his body never stood a chance. Dallas McCarver. Dallas McCarver is one of the most frequently discussed bodybuilders on my channel, and for good reason. His autopsy results were so disturbing, so medically catastrophic, that I've dedicated an entire video breaking them down, which you'll see next week. But here's the short version, and trust me, it's enough to give you chills. Dallas was an absolute monster on stage. Blessed with elite genetics, he exploded onto the scene with a physique that turned heads and dominated competitions. He won his first junior title at just 20 years old, then went on to crush it at the prestigious Arnold Classic. His social media following skyrocketed as fans watched him pack on size at an alarming rate. Everything seemed to be going his way. Then on August 22nd, 2017, at only 26 years old, Dallas McCarver was found dead in his apartment. Initial reports stated the cause of death as asphyxiation from food. He had apparently choked while eating, but that was just the surface. The real horror was revealed the next day when the full autopsy came back. What they found inside Dallas's body was nothing short of shocking. Multiple organs were enlarged, some up to 3 times their normal size. At 26 years old, his body resembled that of a much older man suffering from decades of chronic disease. He had conditions typically seen in elderly patients with lifelong histories of poor health and substance abuse. His blood work told another story. Caffeine, marijuana, and traces of various performance-enhancing drugs were present in his system. But the real killer? The autopsy report explicitly stated the cause of death, a heart attack triggered by severe left ventricular hypertrophy, meaning the left side of his heart had grown dangerously thick and stiff, combined with advanced atherosclerosis, or hardening of the arteries. The exogenous use of anabolic steroids and other drugs played a direct role in his death, according to the medical examiner. And then there's the genetic component. Dallas reportedly had a family history of cardiovascular disease, including hypertension and atherosclerosis. He inherited a cardiovascular system already at risk, then subjected it to years of extreme bodybuilding stress, massive drug protocols, and relentless size gains. Reading Dallas McCarver's full autopsy report isn't just sobering. It's like flipping through the pages of a horror script. Every organ, every disease marker, every measurement screams the same thing. His body was on borrowed time. And at 26, that time ran out. Luke Sandoe. Just a few months after Dallas McCarver's death shocked the bodybuilding world, another tragedy was already brewing, and this one came with a paper trail. Luke Sandoe, a highly respected British bodybuilder, had recently competed at the Arnold Classic Australia. In the week leading up to the show, his coach, Chris Aceto, a former bodybuilder and well-known prep coach with decades of industry experience, instructed Luke to begin taking diuretics to shed water weight and achieve that razor-sharp, stage-ready look. Luke seemed uneasy. A few days before the competition, Aceto sent him an email outlining his protocol. Take the diuretic aldactone every 12 hours, and they discussed potentially adding a second diuretic to the stack. Luke made it through prejudging in Australia, but barely. Witnesses reported seeing him vomit twice backstage. On stage, he was visibly struggling, breathing heavily, unable to hold his poses. Something was seriously wrong. After the show, a fellow competitor checked Luke's vitals and immediately told him, "Go to the hospital, now." A few days later, when someone followed up with Luke, his response was chilling. "Honestly, if I hadn't gone to the hospital, I would have died." His potassium levels were dangerously high, and his kidneys, severely dehydrated from the diuretics, were on the verge of complete shutdown. On May 30th, Chris Aceto reached out to Luke with an email that read, "I'm very sorry about the way things turned out last week." Luke's response, "We play with fire in this game, but sometimes things get burned." In May 2020, at just 32 years old, Luke Sandoe died. The cardiologist's report was damning. Luke had a severely enlarged heart with acute left ventricular failure and hypertrophy. The medical examiner concluded that the primary cause of his enlarged heart was bodybuilding itself, the extreme mass, the drugs, the relentless stress on his cardiovascular system. Luke's family later admitted they didn't know the full extent of the performance-enhancing drugs he was using, but the emails between Luke and Chris Aceto paint a clear picture. Conversations about insulin injections, purchasing growth hormone from an Austrian pharmacist, and instructions from that pharmacist to delete all their correspondence. Chris Aceto, who holds a bachelor's degree in fitness and has coached in the industry for decades, has had multiple clients suffer serious health crises or die before the age of 50, including Cedric McMillan and Sean Roden. When questioned about these deaths, Aceto's response, "Footballers die too." And that brings us to the end of today's video. 10 young bodybuilders, all gone before the age of 30, most from heart attacks, strokes, or organ failure. These aren't just statistics. These are real people who pushed their bodies beyond the breaking point, chasing a dream that, for many, became a death sentence. If you're in this sport or thinking about stepping into it, take care of yourself. Know the risks, listen to your body, and remember, no trophy, no title, no physique is worth your life. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.